All right, guys. So today we're going to be checking out Crin or Crinical's newest IEM. If you're not familiar with Crin, he's been on YouTube for a long time. He's been measuring IEMs for a long time, reviewing them. But in the last year, he's actually come out with his own company, which is CrinEar. And we've checked out a couple of his IEMs in the past. I've been very, very impressed so far. But I've also been impressed with some of his collabs that he's done in the past as well. There's something about the way that he tunes his IEMs I'm just a huge fan of. But the pair that we're going to check out today, which is the CrinEar Reference, is kind of a different monster altogether. If you can't tell just by the name Reference, it is supposed to be the world's flattest measure IEM. By the description of these are made to resemble accurate speakers in a well sound treated room. So this one's really made to kind of pick apart things, or at least that's its intended purpose. But I actually kind of got a different experience from these than what I thought they were supposed to be for. But we'll talk about that part once we get to the sound. First thing we want to do is go ahead and look at the IEMs themselves. They are a CNC machined aluminum shell. It is actually got a little bit of weight to them, which I did kind of find that it's very important to make sure that you have the right ear tip on these, or the weight will kind of pull these out a little bit. But they give you plenty of ear tips to choose from. In fact, they give you 3 different sets of silicone ear tips. You have the standard bore, the shorter bore, and then the wider bore. So, definitely different sizes you want to make sure you play around with. But it also comes with a medium set of foam ear tips as well. Now, I'm not a foam ear tip fan, so I definitely found that I like the standard bore the best out of all of these. Other than that, the only other things they include is a nice little zippered case, and the cable that they're using is a 2-pin silver-plated copper cable. It actually has a thick feel to it. It actually feels premium. It doesn't have that like cheap thin wire to it. You can tell it does have some braid here. And then the connection that you have to plug into whatever devices you're using is actually like a modular system. You can switch it between the 3.5mm plug-in or the 4.4mm balance plug-in. So you do have both of those options right out of the box. And the interesting thing about these is the driver selection that Crin decided to go with, because it is using 5 drivers total in each IEM. It is using dual 10mm dynamic drivers. It's using 3 balanced armature drivers, but 2 of them are the Sonyan drivers that are made just for the mid-range. And then there is a Knowles balanced armature driver that's basically a tweeter. It's handling the highs. So you have everything pretty well separated here, and it's supposed to be the way that the drivers are positioned in the IEM is supposed to give these quite a bit of space, and it's also allowing the dynamic drivers to give you more of a natural bass response. So it's not trying to give you artificial bass. It's not trying to go over the top. Again, we'll kind of touch on this once we get into the sound itself. Now, if you are wondering if you should use these with an amp or not, I'm always going to say yes when it comes to IEMs and headphones, especially studio style headphones, if you really want to get the most out of your lows, mids, and highs. But it does come in with an impedance level of only 16 ohms with a sensitivity level of 104 decibels. So it's really easy to drive these. It's really easy to get some decent volume out of these without plugging them into an amp. Now, I used a FIO K11 for most of my testing, and I used it on basically the flattest setting that I could. I didn't want to like color these too much when it comes to the sound. I really wanted to see if it would live up to the name of being a reference IEM. And I personally don't really think it's reference or neutral or flat. I've checked out a lot of IEMs and a lot of headphones that really are flat. They're just neutral to the point where it kind of sounds dull. I was a little concerned that that's what I was going to get out of these, especially because of the name. But surprisingly, it still kind of has a dynamic tuning to it. The bass has a lot of punch. It's not like overly bloated or overly aggressive, but I do feel like it's pulling out the sub bass pretty well here. And it actually has a natural feel to it. Again, it doesn't feel like overly processed, and it doesn't feel artificial. And again, maybe that's because of the way that it's positioned in the IEM. It just has a lot of space, and that is allowing the mids and the treble to still retain a lot of their detail. Obviously, having the different drivers to handle those is going to do that as well, but the mid-range on these are excellent. If you want an IEM that you can just really pick apart vocals and certain instruments, it didn't matter if it was male or female vocalists, there was just so much detail. Kind of the same thing with the treble. The treble had a nice brightness to it, but not like to the point of being overly harsh or overly bright. It didn't have that like sibilant sound with S's, but there's a lot of detail in this IEM. But there's also a lot of body to it as well, which I did not expect when I saw that reference name. I will say this though, it does kind of give the overall sound like you're in a live environment. I don't know if it's because of the space that I'm feeling with the bass, but just nothing makes you feel like you're isolated or closed in to just like a very small area. So the sound stage and the sound imaging on these, it feels wide. It feels very open. And it does an excellent job of being able to kind of like pick apart and tell where different sounds are coming from. So my overall opinion is this, and maybe it's just because I've got the wrong idea of what reference is supposed to sound like. If you are expecting something neutral, something flat, something that's not going to feel like it's elevated in any kind of way, I don't think that's really what these are doing. I honestly feel like these have some body. It has some life and some dynamics to the sound. In fact, out of all of CrinEar's releases that they've had so far, this one is my personal favorite, but you have to kind of keep in mind, I like a dynamic tuning. I like to be able to feel bass. I like to have my treble be quite bright, and I like my vocals to be a little more upfront. And I think this one kind of checked all of those boxes for me. So this is my favorite release from CrinEar, but at the same time, it's kind of confusing because it doesn't sound like a reference IEM. It doesn't sound neutral. It doesn't sound flat or anything like that. But again, maybe I just had the wrong idea of these coming into them, but I absolutely loved them for what they aren't, I guess, is the best way to kind of explain that. But guys, that wraps up my video on the brand new CrinEar reference IEMs. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.